Good afternoon, Leo.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
Shake your hand, Paul.
Thanks
Well
so
done.
much for doing it
No,
today with
mate,
me.
pleasure.
Yeah.
We've been waiting to be asked.
Yeah.
Behind all of the Manchester royalty.
Do you know, I'm dying to ask you. So I did a video with Greg Wilson and he
Right.
told me about on the 6th day God created Manchester.
Yeah.
So when Greg Wilson said that Leo had an acid tab, and that's where he got the idea.
Yeah. Well, I suppose most people probably know the story, but I'll tell it again for the record. But we was at a hot night at the Hacienda with a girl that worked for me, still a very good friend called Tina Street, and of course at that particular time everybody was doing everything that was going, and that particular night for me was on the acid tabs, I think it was, which was a great experience. Not recommended, by the way. And anyway, when we came out, we were worse for wear. At this particular time, the shop was booming, and I was going to London a lot and buying Soul to Soul t-shirts from Jazzy B and Techniques and all this type of stuff, everything to do with the early start of house, and obviously Soul to Soul and all that type of stuff. Anyway, she said to me I think it was about 2 or 3 in the morning, and she went, she said, we need to come up with a Manchester shirt that represents our town and sell as many as we do as Soul to Soul, which great respect to them. It was a London outfit. Anyway, eventually get home. And I still to this day don't know where it came from, but I remember sat there trying to come round everything. And it just, I don't know, it's because I saw a Bible, because being a good Catholic family, I have a Bible in the house. And bang, it was just there. And I got my Filofax out. I'm showing my age now, innit? Filofax. Scribble it all on. So when you buy a t-shirt, you get all the history of all that on anyway. And we used to have when we were designing new t-shirts, to get people's reactions, you put them on like a board, piece of paper in front of like an artboard or something. So I wrote it all out freehand, and I said, right, you've got to stand up. Right, I said, what do you think of this? And put it back like that. And everybody just went, that's it. That's it, And so I think that was on a Thursday, and then we got a guy called Ken Yarwood to draw up the artwork for it. Anyway, I rushed to the printers who were using Stockport, which was a girl, Andrew and Sue, who did the original Stone Roses t-shirts. I said, can you do me some of these right away? And they went, what? I said, no, I need them today, Anyway, I think they did about 40 or 50 of them. So I got back to the shop and I sat there at 10 o'clock and I said, Tina, right, get them out. So she got my hanger and stuff like that and put one in the window. At that point, I went, got some breakfast or something like that. And I was away, got chatting to somebody. And about an hour and a half later, 90 minutes, I come back like that, and all the hangers had gone. And I said, I thought you were putting the t-shirts out. She said, I've sold them. I went, what?
Wow.
She said, I've sold them. And she said, I've got people coming in asking for them, and then that was it. It was just off and running. I remember one of the window displays we did, we had quite a few mannequins and stuff like that. So we put in the window.
Yeah.
Every one of them was like that. And it just, and here we are, was it 35, 36 years later, and they're still selling today,
I was just going to ask you that. Are you still making money from them?
I'm not making money from them, and we don't sell as well as what we used to. It's a lot of nostalgia. Most of them go around the world.
Yeah.
Expats.
Yeah.
A lot go to Los Angeles, Australia. We even sent some to the Arctic. Some lads that are working there. So that's where it's come. But when it was at its peak and we had all the publicity and, all the press homed in on it and stuff like that, because this is how good or how, not desperate, but how much people wanted it, we'd get sackfuls of mail. Right, well, sackful, get a bag full of mail, Tesco bag full of mail in the morning and go through it all. 90% of it was t-shirt like that. But there was one and it just said, the t-shirt shop, Manchester, England. Right, and that come from the Ukraine. Stuff like that. But it got to us because even the people in the post office knew what it was,
Yeah.
So it was still, when I look back on it, funny enough, I was just walking past Afflecks the other day, and the mosaic at the back with it on. And I've often I'm quite proud of it, obviously, and it's trademarked up, and really get annoyed with people that rip it off, which I always say to people that rip it off, I just write to them and say, you know, a credit me now. I said, could you make a donation to a charity? You know, usually Forever Manchester or your favourite animal charities or something like that. But there was these Japanese people who were like getting on the shoulders to get a photograph of it taken up like that. And it's the first time since I did it, and I thought, bloody hell, I did that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's great, and it's a great nostalgia thing. It's a great thing for the city, as I said. I always say, you know, I'm so proud to have been a part of the Manchester scene, but I'm also mostly proud of being a Mancunian.
Yeah.
And what I did for it, you know, it's a great city.
Do you know, so people don't know much about you as a DJ, but do you know, I'm dying to know about the venue, but I've always been fascinated, and no one ever talks about it, the high energy scene. So I remember there was a record shop in the village, and I was always curious about that, but I don't know anything about it, but it just...
Okay. Well, let me educate you.
Yeah.
So, back about 82, 83, when I was married, my wife at the time was a stewardess for British Airways. And of course, with great respect in that trade, there's a lot of gay lads that were going to and from New York. And we obviously got socialised with them. And at that time, it was still very underground, the gay scene in Manchester, you know, because there's still a lot of prejudice about, you know.
Yeah.
And there was this one club, it used to be where Habitat was, off King Street. And it was called Heroes, owned by a guy called Phil Clegg. And there was a lad in there, Greg Wilson knows of, called Les Cacel.
Yeah.
And he was a Northern Soul DJ.
Yeah.
He's gone now, bless him. And he was, and Kenny from Spinning, they were bringing in music from Italy at the time and America. And it was what we class now as high energy. And it was 12-inch singles. And when we went down to this, so I went to Heroes, got introduced to Les, lovely bloke like that, and I sent him a DJ, which I felt a bit embarrassed about considering what he was doing and what I was doing, but anyway. So he said, oh, come up, what should we do? And I was watching him mix these 12-inch singles. Now, the only other time that's happened to me where my jaw dropped was when Greg was on the tube, I think it was a tube or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And he was showing how to mix records. You know what I mean? Which he's still doing fantastic today. You know what I mean? What a geezer. Which I'd say I've got a connection with him with something else. But so I started listening to all this, and at the time, Les would put tapes in. You know, again, showing my age, C60, C90, like that, and he was mixing all these fantastic records, and I was just blown away with it. Now, it was just prior to, I think the Hacienda was still indie at the time. It certainly moved on from being a boat showroom, but it was just prior to, I think, when Mike Pickett and Graham Park, these lads started doing when the house mused and saying. But I always like to, you know, people may disagree with me, but the original mixing in this city was definitely down to the gay scene. And it was down to a club called Heroes with Les Cacel.
Yeah.
And credit to him for what he was doing. And even at the time, he was telling me, like, he was mixing 7-inch singles.
Oh, that?
Like, just, you know, but no. So that was where, and obviously the high energy thing, you know, I think by the time Canal Street came along, it sort of faded a bit, but it was still, with some of the lads, it was still hardcore, you know, high energy. And it was an exciting music. I mean, the most obvious one was So Many Men, So Little Times, which was on top of the pops.
Yeah. Did that get in the charts?
I think it did, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it did. Because we also broke it with, I was a member of an old Radio Luxembourg DJ called Tony Prince, and he started something called DMC, the Disco Mix Club, which I think is still active today. I think he sold it on. But he sort of pioneered this mixing, and he got lads around him who would remixing records, but they were basically doing 12-inch and putting the break in for the mix. And then he started. So when I got in touch with him and I became a member, I think they've got 3 million members now. I think I've got the membership card. I think it was number 10 member.
Wow.
And I sent him this mixtape at the time, because I was starting mobile DJing, so I was learning everything to do about music and DJing. And I remember we're talking like 70s, 80s, like a DJ on the mic, and you were getting all the girls at it, and it
Yeah.
was a proper personality time,
Yeah.
right? And I remember this, and right out of the blue, he got in touch with me, and he said, "What is this?" So I introduced myself and told him about Les and this type of thing, and he said, "Right, I'm going to try it on one of my shows." So it was Radio Luxembourg. So, and I think we had to listen to what time it was on. It was like 2 a.m. And I remember he played the mix, right? And it stopped. It was only a 60-minute one. And I think 30 minutes in, it stopped, and it reintroduced it and started again. But he'd missed one of the best records out. Anyway, he got on the phone. He said, the response has been mental. He said, I need to get Les down to the Hippodrome when we do these do's and get him on doing the stuff. So I said to him, why did you break it there? He said, it was the content of the tune at the time.
Yeah.
So he said it was quite suggestive. So just put your thinking cap on there, think what is going on. So but then where it became really commercial is like when Divine was on top of the pops, and
Yeah.
it was just mental time. And I think at that time that was a time when Manchester was like, right, this is the city where you want to come out. We're going to create safe space, which I know it's a term that they use now, but then Canal Street started. And then as time went on, obviously the house music came in, and sort of the high energy sort of like faded away.
Yeah.
So that's my interpretation of the story of high energy in Manchester and the gays in general. But there was also, don't forget, also London were pioneer as well. And it's funny, there was a guy called Ian Levine who was another Northern Soul DJ,
Yeah.
and they seemed to finish up on the gay scene, but just going back to Greg Wilson, he approached me and said, I've got this band, would you be interested in having a look and supporting them? And it was 3 guys called Kermit, Black Grape, Carson and Anderson, the Ruthless Rap Assassins.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, I'll have a go. But like everything else, when you invest in bands and clubs, Zucky knows you finish up with now anyway. But so I did, I promoted them, helped them out financially as best I could. And but what I did do for them, I paid for a photo session from to promote at the time, and I came up with this. That wasn't an idea. I came up with this theme that I wanted to do, and it was like, I think it was the '72 Olympics, where the black athletes were, when they'd won, you had the fist like that with the black glove on. So at the start of like the Black Power movement, the Panthers, or whatever it was. And I said to lads, I said, let's do so. I think it was Ian Tilton did the photography. We went down to some athletic ground and got the stage and did it, which, we turned into T-shirts.
Yeah.
But, they could have been absolutely massive. But, look, timing and stuff like that. But that was great. So that was my connection with Greg.
I think the first time I ever went Hacienda was the mixed finals, and Ruthless Rap Assassins played. And Kermit had the biggest spliff I'd ever seen at that point.
Yeah, of course.
I think someone came on stage and took it off him.
Yeah.
But,
probably not the wisest thing to do, but no, they were a great band.
Yeah.
I mean, they were raw. I mean, but at the time, everything was getting overshadowed by the Beastie Boys and Public Enemy and KRS-One and all that, and that was another exciting time. I did. Somebody's asked me to start putting notes down for a book, and I've got this chapter what I'm working on called Life Changes, or moments that changed my life. And I've got quite a few of it, but one of the main ones was when I went to see the Beastie Boys and Public Enemy at the Apollo. What a night that was, and what a gig that was! That was absolute. I've never seen, the only time I've seen a crowd reaction like that and so many people around the gig is when I saw Bowie at Free Trade Hall in '72.
Yeah.
And it was just masses of people about, and that was a life-changing moment for me musically. But yeah, no, I've had quite a few of them, and it was like Sex Pistols, when I saw it goes, a band what don't get a lot of recognition. It's called the Tubes. They did a track called White Punks on Dope. They were exciting.
Yeah.
And seeing Alice Cooper on the Old Grey Whistle Test. It was it was some great times then, and great music about, and still is today. But always say to people of a certain age, and it's nothing against youth today and music because it evolves, but I always think we were born at the right time
Yeah,
when
definitely.
it comes to
Yeah.
music, you know, especially me. And I always said with my DJing, my nights called back in the day, and it's from the Supremes to the Stone Roses and everything in between. And that's because I love it all, which can be a curse sometimes, but you know, but I've fortunately built up a crowd now that want to come and listen to the Supremes and want to listen to Stone Roses in the same night, which is great because I just think, you know, regardless if you're into hip hop, you're into metal and stuff like that, every genre for me personally has got a fantastic, you know, there's something in it special. I mean, whatever you're into, you know what I mean?
Do you know what? That leads nicely into the venue because I was chatting to Tintin last night and he got really passionate talking about the
I bet you
venue.
did.
And I've remembered it because he said that he heard you mix Stack of Humanoid with Black Betty and it blew his mind. He said he'd never heard anything like it.
Mark, what a great memory. That's just come back to me. What a top lad. A DJ for New Order. And we worked together. I dine out on that one, you know. So you know New Order's DJ? Man, a pal, we DJ'd together. Mate, I forgot all about that one because at the time we couldn't compete with the Hacienda and you know, there's still a lot of indie crowds that weren't into the house music and stuff like that. So I used to play about with stuff. But do you know, it's amazing that as you mentioned, I forgot all about that mix.
Yeah.
I do.
He said you influenced him.
Oh, bless you,
And
Mark.
you've influenced a lot of
Yeah,
DJs.
thank you. That's great.
And he was saying that the venue gets treated as a club where it was somewhere you went if you couldn't get in the Hacienda.
That's
it's kind of really unfair that because that was
he's absolutely right. It was the Knockback Club.
Yeah.
Right? But when we carried on doing what we did, when we would play ZZ Top or Public Enemy or the Smiths all in the same night, we started to build up another crowd. That's where I got my sort of like back in the day thinking, well, I'll just build up what I play, you know what I mean? Because no point competing with them. They did it well. How can you compete with Mike Pickering and Green Park at the time? So let's do something different. But within 3 months, we had our own queue.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, if you got knocked back from the Hacienda, you say, oh, I'm sorry, we're full. You know, but we had a good crack with the Hacienda because Paul McNeil that owned the club, I'm sure we had a later license than they did. And when the staff had finished, they'd come down. And usually at the end of the night is I'd got into routine. We used to play a lot of because Tommy the Doorman used to play a lot of well, not a lot. He used to finish the night off with some reggae or and stuff like that, which you know people love. So that was always a great time when they come down. But no, we you know, Mark especially because he took over from me is we developed we stuck by our guns. That is what we're playing. You know what I mean? Nothing, no disrespect to anything else. And you know, it's so massive and still is the house scene. But there was always something, like I said to you, I can go to a Motown night. I can go and watch Iron Maiden. You know what I mean? I can go and watch Hawkwind. I can go to a jazz funk night. You know, I love it all.
Yeah.
Like I said, it can be a bit of a curse sometimes, you know what I mean? But, you know, because like on my playlist on my phone and stuff like that, you looked at it and go, what's all this stuff, you know? Because I was even listening to like The Shadows, some of them old classic tracks, because, well, there's a connection as well, because I think on one of the very first hip hop records come out of New York, they sampled The Shadows. I think it was Apache or something like that. So, which there was a great connection, you know, a band from London in the 60s, you know, and there's like these hip hop pioneer of hip hops in New York sampling like stuff like that.
Was it Ultramagnetic MCs? Was it? Or?
I don't know. I'd have to pass on that one. You know, we're going back some serious memories here, but no, it's I think it's great, and that's what I love about the city. I've told this story before. A pal of mine came up from Cornwall, and we were going out for a week, and I said, "Well, where do you want to go?" And at the time, I think there was a magazine out, City Life, Andy Spinoza, and he'd had an events thing on the back like that. I said, "Well, pick something out of there like that," and he's looking at it, and he said to me, "How lucky you?" And he said, "Look at all these different genres of music, and dub and jazz funk and an indie night and a rock night and, you know, all this type of stuff, Jillies, you know, which is the old rock club stuff like that." I said, to go to him. He said, "I want to go to them all." I said, "Well, you better move up here then." You know what I mean? But that's what this was about. And I've often said this about the history of Manchester, because we going back to the early 60s, I would say. I mean, there was a lot of venues around then, like used to put Herman's Hermits on, Freddie and the Dreamers, and whoever else was local at the time. And so it sort of evolved from that. And, you know, there's so many places you could go. Like, I'd heard, obviously, because I'm not that old, but on a Friday and a Saturday night, down Oxford Road, there was loads of clubs, right? And it'd be nothing to see Rolls Royces, Mercedes, Bentleys, all that. People drove up from London or come from other parts of the country to have a night out.
Yeah.
In Manchester, you know, it was that popular. And I always find it amazing that here we are. I think it was 88. Was talking to, we're doing some advertising in the university, and they were saying that when the Manchester thing happened, the application for Manchester University went off the Richter scale.
Yeah,
They couldn't cope with it.
Yeah.
And it was still like that for a few years later. And from what I can see, it still is, because we've still got that reputation. And of course, we're all older men now. Younger bands are coming along, you know, and they're picking up the mantle and doing it. But what I do feel sorry for a lot of the younger bands is when, say, like the Smiths, you know, came out, you release a single, you know, you take it to the shop, 7-inch, whatever, like that. You do a gig somewhere, you know, and then you get a bit of recognition, and then next, you know, you get signed to Rough Trade. And then next thing you're on Top of the Pops, and the next thing you know, you're buying a house in Hale. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And from what I understand these days, the opportunities for young bands, it's like they get a penny off Shopify.
Yeah.
So, you know, so their dedication to keep these bands going, I just so admire them, because at some point you've got to pay your bills, haven't you, and have a mortgage and stuff. But the opportunities don't seem to be there. But some people seem to drink, like lottery winners, second number one album, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But there's so much talent about, and I think a lot of it, unfortunately, doesn't see the light. I know that's always been the case, but there was more opportunities 30 years ago to make a band and be successful. You know what I mean? Anybody could, you know, when I was at the venue, you know, white labels. Yeah, can you play me track for me? Now, you've got a floor that's full, and somebody says, "Well, you play this new track. You've not heard it or anything, stuff like that." So I used to say to people, "Well, come in half an hour early," and they were just pleased it was played in a club. You know what I mean? Not that there was perhaps only a few people there, but you couldn't sort of take the chance in the middle. You've got a massive dance floor and everybody's rocking. You're going, "Oh, it's a new one from these lads down the road. They did it in a shed." You know what I mean?
So people bring their own record.
Yeah. Well, you know, the most famous white label I got was This Charming Man. You know,
seriously,
yeah,
brought in
some brought in, and because I
Who
had
brought
a
it in?
connection, well, it was some. Well, the story is there used to be a jean company called Crazy Face, by a guy called Joe Moss, and later on Phil Wildball, and Joe was very much into his music. He was a lad about town, and he could talent spot. Anyway, he had a place on Portland Street, and he had an office there where people used to hang out. Dave Haslam, I remember meeting Dave Haslam there when he had a magazine called Debris, which was promoting. And how it happened, he got involved with the Smiths. And shame he's passed now, because he had some great stories. And he sent the record in, and I always say to him, I played. I mean, people had heard it before, and they'd heard of it.
Yeah.
I remember playing it, Paul, 3 times on the run.
Did you?
I've never done that in my life before. But
you just played it and played it.
3 times, played it like that.
Yeah.
And everybody's just going, another one. So I just put the needle back
on.
on.
What club was that in again?
The venue.
In the venue.
Yeah. So going back that way. But then
I didn't realise the venue had been open that long.
Yeah, I think because it would always, I think it'd always been a club for a long, long time. But Paul took it over in the early 80s.
Yeah.
I think, you know. And I think we were just getting popular as the Smiths broke.
Yeah.
You know. But prior to that, I used to do. A lot of people remember DeVille's, and then they had a funky Brocco next door called Lazy Lils, and I used to do that as well. But DeVille's was brilliant. But then you had 42nd Street and Berlin with Alan Maskell and Dave Booth, gone now, bless him, who did that scene very well. And Dave went on to be a fantastic mixing DJ and finished up at Garland's in Liverpool. He stood the course like me. He still loved the music and still very well respected. But it was funny that. So again, in the places like DeVille's, you would have a mixture of goths and, you know, indies or whatever. So again, you're trying to control the floor. But I must tell you this story once. I was getting a lot of, when the indie stuff was happening, I was getting a lot of flack from some of the goth lads, and one of them called Rez Shah. And they were giving me a right load of shit.
Yeah.
So I was getting really annoyed, and I went, all right. I says, right, get on the floor. Right. And they used to like wrecking, used to do that stuff. Right. And I think it was Spirit Walker or something like that. And he said, Spirit Walker, Spirit Walker. So I was right, get on the floor anyway. They all got on the floor and got ready, and I put the Birdie song on. So that'll teach you. And they saw the light side of it anyway, because I soon put on the Spirit Walker.
Yeah.
But again, it was brilliant. There was so many, like The Cure and New Order. I mean, come on, where do you go? I mean, apart from the Joy Division, development into New Order, what they were doing and everything. Manchester was absolutely, for me, the centre of the world.
Yeah.
In July 2025, it will be again when the lads come back
Yeah.
and play a couple of gigs in a park down the road.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's still exciting, and it's still got that about it, really. Absolutely. And it's like I still, as you know, I'm still DJing and still doing very well. But unfortunately, I've sort of took a crowd with me. Now, there was Phil Beckett, Tom O'Toole, and Alison Bell had a night in Chalk called Bop Local, and it was at a local Irish club like that. And they sort of saw, their tagline was keeping babysitters busy.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And they got the name from, I think it was a court where it said Bop Shop Local. They put Bop Local. Great. What a great night they created. But again, and I got the chance to DJ there. And again, people would come because they would all these people that used to come to the venue are now grown up a bit more, you know what I mean? So it was great to play all the old stuff. And I sort of tagged on from that with me back in the day night. Because obviously, Bop Local came to an end. And the way I look at it is, if they said they were keeping babysitters busy, I always look at my crowd is, they're halfway through the mortgage, the kids don't need babysitters, and they just want to go out once a month, only once a month, because they need 3 weeks to recover.
Yeah.
and the big thing now with a lot of gigs and stuff is they starting early and finishing early. You know what I mean? Start at 4 and finish at 10:30. Because I think everybody wants the notion of going out and, not getting off it or whatever, stuff like that, but they want to get up on a Sunday morning and think, all right, I've still got the full day. Because when we were doing it, like, you probably get to bed about 7 on a Sunday morning, and the next thing you know, it was Monday morning. But we're all a bit older now. So that's it. And the other thing is with me now, it's called Mature Tunes for a Mature Generation. No disrespect to youth, but I like to do that. And what's good about it, or what I love about it is that we have sort of a door policy, like, if you're like under 40, 30, it's not really going to be for you, because we don't play any chart music. We just play all the classic stuff. But I always remember a doorman coming up to me. I said, Leo, you're going to have to sort this out. I said, I've got aggravation on the door. And I'm saying, our punters don't do aggravation. We're all mature. We did all that years ago. And it was some young people, there's about 6 of them in the teens, 20s, who wanted to get in. And I just said to them, look, calm down. I said, but the only reason you can't come in is we don't play any chart music. I'm not, with great respect, there's other places for that. And he says to me, we know that. We want to listen and dance to what you do. I said, okay then. And they had it. I'll give it to them. They were no trouble, and they were brilliant, and they knew what, and they were asking for some tunes from back in the day. I said to them, where's all this come from? It's what our mum and dad played. It's like people of a certain age, on a Sunday afternoon, your mum and dad would go in the best room and put the record player and put the, Perry Como or Dean Martin or Frank Sinatra on, the same old tunes like that. Funny enough, though, I was doing a gig somewhere, and I noticed it was a family do, and there was quite a few people, well, in the corner, some oldish people in the 70s, stuff like that. And I was waiting for people to come in. I thought, just for a laugh, I'll put some Dean Martin on and stuff like that, honestly. And it's got to a stage now, people say, you're going to play Dean Martin again or whatever, all them classics. But because they're still entitled to have a good night, But the one lady really loved it. In fact, there's one gig I was doing where I can't particularly what the system was like that. And at the end of the night, she come, you know, and she said, "Oh, come here." I thought, "Oh, here we go, aggravation. I didn't play a record or something like that." She said, "I'm going to give you a hug." She said, "That bloke there." She said, "The last time he danced was at our wedding 33 years ago." And I said, "Well, he's been ripping the floor up tonight, you know." So it's all good, all good. It's the love, it's the passion for it.
So I always aim for around half an hour, and I always lose track of the time. And I always like, well, I like to end videos with like pick a favourite track. But with you, I'm dying to ask you as well, what was your favourite club you worked in?
Oh,
Or what was your favourite era even?
well, it's not finished.
Good answer,
It's not finished.
Yeah.
And the favourite club, they were all, each one was, but DeVille's,
Yeah.
you know, the venue, I suppose, was the one where I met Mark, and a lot happened there between all the younger DJs, younger as we were then, you know. But look, what I love about, not just me still doing it at my age, very successful. You look, Matt Tintin, as everybody knows, Rob Thurston, you know, Dave Turner, he was back at Berlin and places like that, and he still does an output Red Line in Todmorden. You know, Dave Aslan, you know, and up right today, Mike Tracy, Electric Emma, Leon Donnelly. There's still loads of good talent there, and they do all them variations. But you know, there's still some of the old heads that are still doing it and still pull the crowd. You know, which is great.
What would be your favourite track from the venue then?
It's got to be Charming Man.
Yeah,
it's got to be. I mean, listen, it's a difficult one, isn't it? You know, it's like that Desert Island Disc. You know, I could like do a budget one and do 5. You know, but no, I'm going to go with Charming Man. But there's so many, especially when you love all types of music. You know, because you could say to me, "What's your favourite Iron Maiden track?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's stuff like that. But no, I mean, been very privileged.
Yeah.
Very lucky. Had some great people around me. You know, supporting me. Obviously my wife Julie, you know what I mean, because she does all the bookings and everything, and keeps it all going. And she's my house's critic, you know, because I remember one night I had a few too many drinks, stuff like that, and I think one particular track, and she come up to me and said, "Do you realise you just played that twice?" And I went, "All right." Yeah, but no, it's and the other thing is as well is that, you know, I was me and Tintin were talking about this the other day. The key to our type of DJing is room reading.
Yeah.
So if them 70-year-old people are there tapping the foot to Dean Martin, and then I've got somebody, you know, Luther Vandross, or, you know, whatever, I'm looking for the feet tapping, and I'm looking to get them. But at the end of the night, it's our particular age, the 70s and 80s, the 70s disco and 80s stuff, which people love it, you know, just for a change, you know. But you've really got to know your game, really. You know, it's very difficult. You know, I mean, I always say this to people when you're doing house music, with great respect, your talent is, you got to be on them decks and mixing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you're doing a one genre of music with a beat, you know, but then it's picking your tunes, because even you need to read in your room on what your tunes like that. And it's like, but me going back to the old days, like Cinderella Rockefellers in Bolton, when I worked with John Mayo, you literally were on the mic. It was that sort of, "Hey, love, you all right?" You know, but that's what he needed then.
Yeah.
But no, all good, mate. All good.
So thanks so much. I'll stop recording now. I can do it with my watch. Here we go.
Brilliant, Paul.
Yeah,
Well done,
yeah.
yeah. Thank you.